Hopefully it just goes back to...
All right, we're streaming. Are we back? Are we live? I have a feeling we're not, but we'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do a refresh. Hit that refresh. Did you close and reopen OBS?
No.
Live. We are live.
Good.
Okay. Now, let's see if the audio is still really, really bad. This is the old video. Yeah. So we want to click that one. Welcome, everyone. We're going to see the chat real soon and see if our audio is still an insufferable loop from hell.
All right,
Fixed, boys.
The demons have gone.
Yes? Okay.
All right, cool.
All right. We are back. And what's beautiful is we've got that 2-minute 24 thing, and that's probably going to go live onto YouTube. And people will see that. I'll just unlist that so that doesn't go live. So if you want to give them the premise of what we're doing here again.
Now that you can actually hear properly, the premise of this video is we're going to do a ideal Elder Scrolls 6 Hammerfell. So if the game is set in Hammerfell, we're going to theorize about what it could be. Sort of similar to the Fallout Wyoming that we've recently done, that we're going to be fleshing it out. And we haven't got as many notes as we did for Fallout Wyoming before we came to do the stream. So we're going to back and forth a bit with you guys. And basically this is just a big idea session for a Elder Scrolls 6 Hammerfell, if that were to be the game. But this is just our ideal one as well. But we'll be, we've got some ideas already for factions and cities and stuff like that. We already get an idea of the terrain and so on. And it's not all just desert either. Like, we'll go through this kind of thing. But there's certain bits and pieces, and we'll have to make some calls to, like, they call some cities and then some not, like.
Oh, yeah. And like same as the exact political situation. And like you guys know, there's the Forebears factions and the Crowns factions of the Elder Scrolls universe, of Hammerfell. We don't know 100% which one owns which city or is in control. We know like pretty much. Yeah. But I remember there are like 2 or 3 where we have to guess.
Basically, we've also evened it up. So if you wanted to like take a map of Hammerfell, what we can kind of say is that Sentinel is Forebears, Tanith, Ghislaine, and Rehard is also Forebears, Hegaith, Dragonstar, Skaven, and Ellen here seem to be Crowns. Now, this is based on like little bits of lore, and we're kind of just like trying to we don't have 100% confirmed answers. Like there's some, like for example, Skaven, which actually I don't think ever is I'm pretty sure it's that one that's not referred to as Crowns, but it's so likely to be Crowns. And also the way we've split it up is that there's like 8 main cities. So we'd want to sort of 4 on each roughly.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
For people asking, I am Scott here.
And this is Michael.
So
our voices are very similar, especially when we do our YouTube audio where we're like speaking for a script and it's like really strong.
But I look like a Breton. But so with Hammerfell, there's the Forebears and there's the Crowns, right? In terms of a political kind of landscape, right? Yeah. Now, recently, the biggest thing, for starters, we should probably say we want to set like an Elder Scrolls 6 ideal Hammerfell or something very soon after Skyrim, maybe even concurrently, but just so it's still got the same sort of political landscape with the Thalmor and so on. And in Hammerfell particularly, they're no longer part of the Empire. So this will be the first main title that we're playing that is not controlled by the Empire. And it's...
Which makes you wonder, from a statistical perspective, is Elder Scrolls 6 even going to be set in a non-Empire control place if they've never done it? Like, it's just another bonus point from, could be High Rock. Yeah. Could be High Rock.
So so there's basically, they seceded from the Empire because the Empire was going to give off Southern Hammerfell to the Thalmor as part of the White Gold Concordant, but they bailed. And so Hammerfell fought on the war by themselves. And they won. They ended up citing a second treaty of Strass Mackay, and I think it was 180 it's signed. So it's only like 20-ish years before the events of Skyrim
–
that this happened. So, and the forebears and the crowns are actually on quite good terms now than they have been before because of uniting against the Thalmor and stuff like that. But
especially because Sentinel sent troops down to one of the cities. Was it Hagath or Ghislaine?
Hagath.
Right.
So then they protected the
Crown City, and then they kind of formed an alliance, and they built like a shrine to Tava there, and they're all like peace and
I feel
togetherness.
Like so. And also just to establish, like with crowns and forebears, we don't want them to be like hardcore. I guess this is a hard, like they're not factions in there like 100% adherence. It's like a cultural faction, like background. So the crowns are the more conservative, more strong Yakutan faith kind of group that basically descended from the Natutambu, which is the royal class of
warriors
of Yakuta.
Yeah, not
and
warriors.
The forebears descended from the Regatta, which is basically the first warrior wave that came in. So there's a bit of a distinguishment there. Like basically it's conservative versus a more sort of cosmopolitan / progressive kind of forebears.
Yeah.
But
and there will be elements of both in. That's the thing that we want to do with all of the different cities and stuff, is it's not like, oh, this is a crown controlled city, so everyone here has really strong crown ideals, no variance to any other crown cities.
Well, so here's the thing. According to the law, it seems that there is no High King of Hammerfell since it was King Thessard or something. The events of Elder Scrolls Redguard, the Adventures game spin-off. But there's been no High King since then. So what it seems to me is at least kind of like the situation in High Rock, that there isn't a High King, but there have been before, but there's individual kingdoms and they all swore allegiance to the Empire when Tyber Septim conquered them. But since their empire's gone, they're still individual kingdoms. They sort of have like a cultural unification in areas and stuff like that. But yeah, so they're completely autonomous. They have their like background. So for example, Dragonstar, if we decide on that being a Crowns one, because it's not super definitive, then the Dragonstar guy can still be a bit, say that the king there or whatever, can be a bit more chill with Nords or something, or Bretons, or a bit more like cosmopolitan. Not that we want to necessarily do that. What I'm saying is just because they're a Crown's king or just because they're a Forebears king doesn't mean they're completely colored by the personality of the typical personality of the Crowns versus Forebears.
And you will still have the cities that are like, this is a super Crowns heavy belief city.
Probably like,
and then more in between, because it kind of lets you, especially in a storyline where you want to have some kind of agency to shape things. Perhaps you could kind of shift the viewpoints of different leaders into like, you know what I mean? Like let's make this city like more traditional and go back to its roots. Or the other way around.
I'll throw out there that just because some people are asking, but we're all safe from the fires. There's like, you get smoke and ash every now and then.
Hey, Zarek's here. Zarek,
we're in Sydney.
How you going? And that's right, basic writing stuff. Don't make your settlements a hive mind. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's really important to us, because we don't want to, like, so simple ideas just to throw some. So you've got the Forebears and you've got the Crowns, but then there's some cities that, so say Rehard is basically right on the corner of the Gold Coast of Cyrodiil and where Anvil is and stuff. So we would kind of want that city to have a bit more like Clovian influence, and even maybe in the architecture a bit more similar to Anvil
Gold
and Oblivion.
Coast vibes.
But like, yeah, so they're just a bit more of because they're obviously not friendly with the Imperials because they're annoyed for what they did. But the influences there the Imperial influences have been there for so long that they're their own influences. Like, so for 300, 400 years or whatever in the Third Era, they've been exposed to the Clovian side of things, and that Redguard city kind of develops in its sort of own way. In the same way that all cities in America or anywhere in the world have their own identities. It's like, yes, they're all American cities, but like,
there's all like little subcultures and different things that shape them over time.
No one thinks that, LA and New York are the same. They're very different. Or those kinds of things. Like they're still
Wyoming and
they're all American, but they should have their own it's like layers. So here's the base layer. It's like America. So instead we'll have Hammerfell. They're all red guards. Then it's like crowns of forebears. Okay. And then it's like, where are they next to? Maybe they're Dragonstar and they're close to Skyrim. So you've got more Nordic influences, or Rehard's got more Clovian influences. Or you've got Skaven, which is out in the middle of sort of deserty Badland looking area that can be more isolated and more like the crown sort of element can thrive there because it doesn't have the exposure on the sides.
And all the different like kings and even queens, like all the various leaders of the different places will all be very individual as well. Like, you know, they'll all be different flawed individuals. So they may even have, you could call it a friendly rivalry with like supporting cities of the same crowns or forebears allegiance, but still be like ultra competitive, say because of trade, or just like a past history of like disagreements in the past, because they've all had different alliances. It's funny, the more I look into it, it feels more like High Rock in terms of like, hey, wait, they're not all this
and also
united
like going off
province.
Some cities have kind of flip-flopped, like Sentinel's been both a crown city and a forebear city, and other places people have, because we don't like 100% know that these are always like they are. Some of them, it's theorized some of the others have flip-flopped and stuff as well, because they'll get taken over by others.
For sure. So we could just go briefly through ideas for each city.
I will just catch there. Someone's like, I want more orcs. We would, because Orsinium it's in the Dragontail Mountains now.
Yes.
From memory. But it's in Hammerfell, between the Hammerfell Skyrim's kind of border. So or near that Dragonstar kind of, maybe even towards Ellen here, or maybe more towards the north. But we can put in an Orsinium, which I think would be awesome. Because you won't have, you know, orc strongholds all throughout the area like you would in Skyrim.
But Orsinium could be huge. And I think, like, I guess the difference between Elder Scrolls and Fallout when it comes to choice is Elder Scrolls has more of a choice of who you want to be, what guild do you want to join, and like kind of that kind of angle, like which it has less ways, not that we don't want to change that a bit, but to actually influence factions themselves. But I can really see Orsinium being an opportunity in Elder Scrolls 6 if it was set in Hammerfell, where you could decide to siege it with all these like knights, or defend it, or kind of there could be some choice there, a real like battle for Whiterun set piece moment.
Because for Hammerfell, they've got, and the Red Guards particularly, they've got a lot of history, like them and the Bretons teaming up to siege Orsinium before, always happened. In Gaiden Shinji, a Red Guard hero, also playing a big part in some of the earlier sieges of Orsinium. But then you also have the thing that when the Regada came, and they've had lots of stuff in their mythology about fighting like Morlock, aka Malakath, and all these goblins and stuff like that. So if we put a lot of goblins and stuff with the orcs, and because Orsinium is supposed to be a place of, you know, orcs and ogres and all the pariah kind of, you know, Malakath's folk.
We're blending videos now.
But it would be really, really cool to have an Orsinium there for that reason. It just ties really well into a Red Guard sort of. It's a green people are Red Guard antagonists, you know, throughout all Hammerfell pretty much. Like, you know, whether it's like goblins or stuff or orcs, they don't like green. Maybe it's because there's no grass. I mean, there is. There is in the north, but yeah.
It's too arid.
Talking about the lore, the gameplay aspect as well. So just to throw out there for people, we kind of don't want to go too much into the gameplay aspects all the time, because we could talk about that infinitely so long. We'd probably do another separate sort of ideal kind of like.
We have an ideal Elder Scrolls 6 video that's like an hour long that we made in 2014. We want to update a lot of stuff in that because of how gaming's progressed in the last 5 years, but also almost 6 years. It's 2020 now. Shit.
Someone also mentioned, didn't know Gaiden Shinji was saying, like, there's another one saying Shinji was Akaviri, but he's actually a Red Guard. And I'll throw out this, and this will be an interesting thing to color it, but the Yakutans are so Japanese, it's not funny in their cultural roots. It's sort of like, it's well disguised because on the surface, you've got all of this North African and sort of Middle Eastern aesthetics, and they've got their curved swords and such. But in terms of the actual like cultural core, and even some of the naming conventions, like Shinji, but like we did an IRL inspirations video recently on the channel, and Yakuta, like there's all these little things, like Ansai means sword saint. Saints of the Sword or something in Yakuza, right? And in Japanese, Kensai, which sounds very similar, is Sword Saint in Japan, and this was given to people who were like,
masters with a sword,
masters of sword and stuff. Yakuza itself is a beach in Japan, and then there's like all of these little things, but then also there's a complete like side to side allegory between the military dictatorships and history and stuff of Yakuza and Japan during the Sengoku period. So it's like, basically it's Japan, and the sword singers themselves are like samurai. There's all these little details that just add up.
The more you look into it, the more you feel like, hey, this isn't that creative.
Yeah,
they've ripped so much from actual history, but that's all right. I mean, that's a lot of things when you dig into it.
So we want to throw a little bit of that into Hammerfell as well. Like it's not.
Also, I will just say, unless you have anything else to say on that topic, I wanted to talk about the actual premise of being a sword singer and all spirit swords. Okay. So this is an interesting one, guys, because there's this whole idea of, how you were the Dragonborn in Elder Scrolls 6 and you had dragon shouts and you were prophesized to save the world. And if Bethesda did something similar with Elder Scrolls 6 and they're like, oh, you are an avatar of some Yakutan god, or like you're just whatever, you're a sword singer, right?
Yeah.
And then we've made a video where we talked about you can go and collect memory stones as ways to like learning different spirit sword powers which replace Dragonborn shouts, which sounds cool in theory, but the more we think about it, the more we can see there's probably, there are issues with it. 100% there are issues, especially for role-playing and lore. Like, it kind of cheapens the lore unless you're a prophesized person who can just learn all these powers, that you can just start using a spirit sword. And if you are prophesized, so it does make sense, it kind of ruins the role-playing because... I don't know. And I know in Skyrim you could be a Khajiit Dragonborn, and that didn't feel 100% the same as being a Nord Dragonborn, but it will feel weird if you're like an Argonian who is like a, avatar kind of, or aspect of Hunding, the god that makes way for the Red God people. And
it sounds like it's the difference between what Bethesda is going to do. Like, I'm sure they might like go and cheapen their lore for the sake of like, everyone's a sword singer or whatnot.
Yeah, Zarek's saying like manifestation of Hunding. We agree. It's just it can just, and especially if you're not a sword character, what does it become? Like,
Hunding seems so culturally ingrained with the Red Guards specifically. Like, you could even argue that Akatosh giving like the Dragonborn blessing, like, there's been Imperial kings and Imperials and Bretons and stuff that have been like emperors and so on. It's not all just like they incorporate the thumb into it, but it's not just like you're not the reincarnation of Izmir Wulfarth or something like that, or you're not like, or a specific cultural hero. Like, it's a bit more vague. It's like Akatosh, dragon blood, like the emperors.
It's still not completely vague, but
it's not. They just took thumb and tied it.
But it cheapens the thumb, like when you already know 100%. The lore. So in our ideal game, the main character, and look, Bethesda could easily do it. I'm not going to be surprised if they do it. But in our ideal game, you are not a prophesized sword singer. We are thinking of having a guild, which is kind of reviving the art. And maybe if you join this guild and go to the end, you can unlock some spirit sword powers through hard training, which work like a power. Like, you can use them once a day. You get this crazy sword that can do maybe 3 or 4 different things depending on which power you used with it. Maybe it is unblockable, maybe it's super fast, things like that. But it's kind of weird if you have like I'm a stealth archer, and then suddenly you press your power button and like in Skyrim, they had a thing for every different dragon shout. Like, even assassins had throw voice. What are you going to have for sword singing? Like, this is stealth sword move. This is thunderstorm sword move. Ice beam sword.
It's like Zarek's saying there is the concern for fake urgency and stuff, which they have in like Oblivion and Skyrim and stuff. It's like, quick, go here, go do this, go do that. I'm actually, one thing I do like about Oblivion, at least, there is urgency there, but I do like that you you're not necessarily the hero. So if I want to go into Oblivion, I don't want to be the hero. I want to be a Dark Brotherhood assassin and leader of the Dark Brotherhood. And that's it. That's me role-playing that. I'm not also the Dragonborn. Like, I don't have this, like, other obligation. So, like, every character that I've ever played, if I touch the main story, that I'm also this prophesized kind of hero to save everything with dragons and so on. And also because you're even encouraged to go through that main story. Like, it's almost like not essential, but like if you want dragon aspects and all of these shouts and stuff, and you want to see dragons in general and dragon plate armor, like you're going to need dragon bones. Like all of these things add up and sort of push you towards doing it, which I understand. Like it's still good if you're playing like some Nordic warrior. It's great, but it's like there's lots of other characters.
You know, I was actually, here's a shower thought for you. And you know how like you can have thoughts twice, but then the second time you have it just clicks in, or you're like, oh, and it weighs heavier.
Yeah.
I was in the shower and I was just like, I have a feeling Bethesda's just going to give you these innate powers again. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like, are they really going to, like, because obviously, like, if we just think about it, not from a lore perspective or anything, but just like a attention perspective, like a social media viral perspective of getting their games, into the hands of as many people as possible. Fusro Da makes for good memes. Like all of these things became such like an iconic, like share it, like get attention. Dude. I just can't, I mean, I will be happy if they go back to like Oblivion style or even Morrowind style where you don't have this like innate power. You may be prophesized to do something, but there's no Dragonborn power button. I reckon they're going to keep some power button. I won't be surprised.
Imagine if they just end up like ripping off Bleach, like the anime, and they're all like, oh, and you like, shut up, Bunkai, and then it's this like unique fucking sword thing, and it's like,
The other weird thing is, okay, so if you're not a sword character, like, how is it based on one-handed skill? Does it benefit from one-handed perks?
That's the thing.
Can it become a great sword? Like, is it just a set-piece power that happens and does the same damage irrelevant of who you are? Because that's what it would have to be if they give it to every character.
Yeah.
And then I just feel like it's going to be heaps cheap.
And here's the thing too that I just want to throw out there is that a lot of people say that the necessity that Bethesda feels with the Dragonborn kind of thing, or like kind of chosen one kind of vibe, is to fulfill power fantasies. Now, power fantasies are really cool. They're fun, even in role playing. But you know, you could become godlike in Morrowind and kill God. Like this is a power fantasy in itself, but you sort of had to work to achieve it or so on. But you're not forced.
And wasn't there always like doubt cast on whether you really were
the Nerevarine? Like people make cases back and forth whether you actually are the Nerevarine or you're just conveniently the one that succeeded.
Because with like Dragonborn, you can prove it. It's like, hey, I just absorbed a dragon's soul and shouted you off a cliff. I'm Dragonborn.
I think actually it was even funnily enough, Zarek. It was an older Zarek
420
video and
people
stuff.
Watching.
It was talking about Dragonborn in general. Before it was associated with the Thorman shouts and took all the Nordic stuff, it was just the power of like Dragonborn stuff, besides being able to wear the Amulet of Kings and light the Dragonfires, was just sort of like larger than life kind of character. It was kind of vague. Like what made this person a Dragonborn was kind of just like, yeah, I have great blood and stuff. Like kind of like almost feels like divine kings of ancient history and stuff, that they didn't go and use superpowers on the day-to-day basis. They just were like kind of but in that
for sure. So yeah, and thank you so much for your support. Been watching since 10k subs. That's
a long time.
Yeah, that's a very long time. I also saw someone saying they're gonna monetize perks.
Oh, that'd be crazy.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh no.
I hope they try and do a good.
Call me crazy, but I feel like it's so hard to ruin an Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah.
Unless they drastically change the formula.
Everyone will get into, like, to be honest, if you just re-released Skyrim in a new area and so on, everyone will eat it up. Like, it's going to have its problems and all that, but then with mods, and then everyone's still going to love it and get into it.
If they follow the same formula for Skyrim, as much as there are critiques with Skyrim, I will be happy. Like, if I could lock in my bet now, and they're like, okay, it won't be any better, but it will be just as good as Skyrim. Would you want to place this, like, confirm this now? I'd be like, yep, do it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not an MMO fan, really. So for ESO, I don't really like ESO for the gameplay reasons. That's not my kind of jam, right? They've done the lore bad sometimes. They've added some good lore in ESO and so on. But imagine if ESO, instead of that, was just an Elder Scrolls 6 and like the same areas, the same lore and stuff. I'd be into it. I'd be like, yeah, this is cool. And I'd be like, oh, I don't like this lore. Because in the same way in Skyrim, I'll be like, oh, they changed this. That's kind of sucks. Or they changed this. Or they
like,
watered down this.
Where's the Nordic pantheon? Like,
yeah, and those kinds
of
things. But I still enjoy Skyrim. Whereas, so if they put out an Elder Scrolls 6 and they do the same things, I'll be like older and cynical and be like, oh, that sucks. But still, I'll probably enjoy it.
Yeah.
Still.
The thing that will bug me the most, where I'm not sure if I'll enjoy it as much, is if they ever did something like voiced protagonists and stuff like
they've
that.
got to give that up.
That would do some damage.
It's not
but it's too hard because of the races and stuff.
Magically, if you could have 3 different preset voices for each of the different races and so on, I'd be like, yeah, fine, do voice protagonist. No way that's going to happen. Like if you took, so you got your 10 races, then you've got 2 genders. So say you've got
I'd still say no.
So then you've got 20, and then you've got to times that by say,
I know 60 voice actors or something, but I'd still say no. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it still limits role playing freedom.
Yeah, it does. But I feel like it would still be. It would pay off well enough if you could still be like darker sort of assassin-y kind of evilish kind of voice. Not voice. I know it's like not more.
Yeah, but like for example, I want to be old. Like I think there's too many characters I can think of where I'm just like, even if they did 60 different voiced protagonists, I'd still be like, nah, just give me voice.
Anyway, the point is they're not going to do 60 protagonists, so they can only go smaller than that, and then it's like no. So unless they're going to do, hundreds of voice actors just for the protagonist and billions of lines, like
for sure.
It's just
anyway. Yeah. Let's talk about. I reckon we could talk about some of the different factions that we've come up with.
So I'll just throw out there, we don't want to have just one faction for each fulfillment type. So like for a play style. So here's your assassin faction, here's your thief, here's your warrior, here's your mage. Because I mean, in Skyrim, some of them weren't that great, and then some of them were good. But we kind of want a bit more like difference in ideology and stuff, or get a bit more creative. So, for example, in Morrowind, you do have a fighters guild, you do have a mages guild, and you do have a thieves guild and stuff. But you also have the Morag Tong, which is it's not just, we're evil assassins who assassinate for the sake of assassinating. They've got a very specific function within the culture of Morrowind. And then you've got the Telvanni and the House Redoran and House Hlaalu, which arguably like your more roguish style, House Hlaalu and Telvanni mages, and then Redoran warrior. So it's like a cultural specific alternative to the just the more generic fighters guild or something like that. But that allows a lot more role playing by having those options. So you know what I mean? Because if you just, I'm a warrior, so I'm going to do the fighters guild, and it kind of lacks the...
Yeah, for sure. And you don't have to have one for every single play style, multiple guilds.
Yeah. Some of them, like, it could be the direction you take the guild in.
You can have a thieves guild where you just have more agency. But then a mages guild where there's also a necromancer's guild.
The other thing, in Morrowind, you could join the Imperial Cult and the Tribunal Temple.
Yeah.
This is something we'd want to do as well. So we'll have like the Imperial Cult / Forebears religion temple, and then you'd also have the Yakutan temple and stuff. And like these are some of the we want because I think the gods are such a huge part of the game. So perhaps even some Daedric worship and cults that you could join as factions. But because the gods are such a big part of the Elder Scrolls, it kind of feels cheap to not really like have them in any sort of capacity or see the religious.
Oh, we will. And the good thing is as well is with the difference between crowns and forebears, there will actually be kind of religious differences in the different churches and temples that you see in the different cities. So some of the cities will have more, like forebears, for example, will have kind of more an imperial based pantheon with red guard names. Yeah. Basically, like the 8 divines kind of thing, I mean.
Yeah.
And then in more crown-controlled territories, you'll definitely see more of the old Yakutan god shrines and worship and things of that nature. And then again, in some places, you may see a hybrid between the two different styles.
Yeah. Because that's too to consider as well, like how even throughout a lot of history and so on, and even within the 8 divines, there are like temples to the specific. So like you're not a priest necessarily just, oh, I'm a priest of the 8 divines. You can be like a priest of Mara specifically, or a priest of whatever specifically. So, but we'll just sort of like, you know, figure it out, divvy it up and so on. But yeah, like, it would be a shame to not have the Yakutin stuff, because what they did to Skyrim was basically they pay like a tiniest bit of lip service to the old gods. Like you hear Shaw mentioned a few times and Kine, but like it's just like, oh, everyone's just the Imperial cult. It's the same thing. And then and also it's kind of funny, but like Talos being incredibly important to them isn't really like like you can like but it's like arguably there's more important things in the Nordic pantheon that they would be worried about. I think it might even be another shouting out Zarek again, but one of his ideas instead having if the friction between the Imperials and it was the Imperial cult and their gods and the old gods and worshiping the old gods they were trying to push out would kind of make a bit more sense, it'd be a bit more
for sure
interesting rather than just fixating on the one Talos thing.
For sure. So some of the factions that we have come up with, obviously there's the forebears and the crowns. The Thalmor will be there in some capacity, but it's hard to say. It's
like
really
we'd probably
hard
at the
to
very
say.
least we'll try and do some sort of like maybe some secret operation thing or age or something. We want some kind of representation there, but it's not like they're going to have a big embassy sitting there or so on. Or
I'll tell you something interesting, and here's actually a problem with Elder Scrolls 6 being set in Hammerfell, but unless they do, and only Hammerfell, but unless they do a Thalmor invasion 2.0 or something big, we're not actually going to get a Thalmor resolution. I don't think, because if you have a game set in High Rock, for example, you could really intertwine it with this whole idea of like, for starters, the Thalmor can already be there, because it's like Empire kind of land. But secondly, there's this whole theory that the Thalmor are trying to undo like creation itself, like undo the world with all these different towers that are situated around Tamriel, right? So
around Nirn.
Nirn. And there's one of them is the Adamantine Tower, supposedly, in High Rock. So if you had a High Rock game, you could have that as a plot piece where the Thalmor, there's some really deep conspiracy Thalmor stuff and they're trying to undo the world, and then you stop them from doing that. And maybe even then it's still hard to find a resolution, but you can't, maybe you could, like if they did it, I don't know, but just with Hammerfell, I can't see it giving us the Thalmor resolution. Unless what, they invade again, you defend them off. Okay, they're still in Somerset Isles, they're still in elsewhere, they're still in Valenwood.
Interesting.
How are we going to get the resolution?
I wonder too if they're kind of actually planning on not, because the Thalmor are, like arguably having the Thalmor and Elmeri Dominion there makes a more interesting political landscape than just the Empire runs everything. So they might not want to have a resolution. And also think about like, unless there is sort of that towers kind of somewhat like metaphysical aspect, the resolution's not going to be like, let's go to war with them and just have a big great war
for sure
thing, because you know Elder Scrolls isn't, the games aren't really about wars.
Maybe it could be that you stop them from doing the Adamantine Tower thing, and then you expose that that's what their plan was, and then the Thalmor kind of dissolves because no one is going to want to support them anymore once they know that they tried to destroy creation. Also, someone asked me what I think of mounts. I actually covered that in a recent video of it's called 4 Things You Want We Don't, you being like just fans and comments we see in general where people say I want this in Elder Scrolls 6, and one of them is like all these crazy different mounts like Elder Scrolls Online, and I just think no, but yeah, you can have a few like camels in Hammerfell makes sense, so I agree with that.
We could throw in so in regards to the other political force in Hammerfell to some degree would be the Empire, like because I'm assuming Hammerfell and Empire aren't going to be, like, they're not in open warfare or so on. They don't like each other. But I can imagine, like, you know, maybe having some diplomats and stuff coming and trying to, like, lure some of the individual forebear cities back into it, like maybe in Rehard or I don't know, maybe even Ellen here. It's on the border, but it's a crown city. But the other interesting thing there is that there would be a big Talos cult, I think, in Hammerfell, because everywhere in the Empire's territory, worship of Talos is outlawed, and then you can get, you know, strung up for it. Whereas if you go to Hammerfell, the Thalmor have no direct control over this area, so it could be a bit of an asylum for all of these Talos cults and worshippers and stuff that have left Cyrodiil or left Skyrim or left High Rock
now
to come
we're
to
not,
Hammerfell and flourish.
We're not talking about a whole province thing. It like, right?
No.
I assume it's just like a faction.
Well, yeah, a faction, but
Or
what
little
I'm saying is you'll
pockets of
find
it.
like little pockets of groups of people and stuff, or you just talk to people that openly can worship Talos, and there's no...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't know, some of the Hammerfell guys might have a bit of a problem with it, but what I'm saying is it's the safest place for Talos worshippers that... pretty much, yeah. I would say it's the closest culturally, like it's another nation of man, and then... obviously, if you go to Black Marsh or Morrowind, it's very alien and not, and they're not exactly like Nine Divines friendly.
Of course. Of course. So, there's also going to be Alakian nomads who won't be like a joinable faction. They'll just be more a faction that's there. You can help them. They're living their life out.
Yeah.
In the desert, doing Alakia things.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll just throw in some mentioning about, because mounts and stuff, cavalry, horseback fighting and stuff in Elder Scrolls 6. I'm sure they'll just put that in straight away because they added it in an update for Skyrim initially.
Oh yeah.
But and people have mentioned weapon variety and stuff, but I definitely want spears. I feel like spears are just such a cool and essential.
Mate, did you see
thing.
My tweet that I made about it? Oh, I was just saying I feel like every single Elder Scrolls 6 discussion is just like everyone's like discussing all their cool ideas, and then there's always that squad of like 5 guys chanting in the background like spears.
Yeah,
like that's all they want. Yep, there's one.
But like, they are so cool, and people go like, everyone in history
we need to make a
used them.
spears merch, literally just a shirt that says spears in caps with a big spear through it.
But it'll be it'll be cool stuff. But we've got so moving on with factions, we sort of... So let's just talk about magic ones for starters. So Redguard attitude in with magic seems to be like probably closer to a Nordic kind of thing. They're a strong warrior culture and all their honor and stuff, and they can see magic as a bit like cheap or like dishonorable.
Especially
or weird.
Conjuration.
And yeah,
they do not like Conjuration.
Yeah, so there's varying degrees of acceptance and so on. But in Ellen here, there is, well, in ESO, there was the whole Constar constellation, and there were lots of mages there and so on, like storyline. And it was called, it's called like the City of Magic in the lore. It has these cool big towers. But we should have like, I was thinking we'll have a mages guild that is sort of more acceptable to Redguard culture, but then also a darker one, like a more necromantic kind of thing, especially because Redguards hate the necromancers and so on.
Yeah.
And there's even like antagonists and stuff we can do. But so we're going to use the word magi which is like an Iranian old word. It's like, and other things have used it for as well instead of mage, but just to give it a little bit of like North African, Middle Eastern flavor.
Yeah, for sure.
To the mage, but have them be this sort of destruction, alteration, like maybe even parts illusion, but they maybe have them as sort of advisors and stuff or so on. But I feel like they can't actually do too much, because I don't know like how many crowns and stuff would be happy with having.
I think they could support like if they were to kind of advise different leaders, they could just be more prominent in forebears areas.
Yeah.
And obviously you're going to have that crown's leader who is more progressive compared to other crowns. So you could have kind of like what you were saying the other day, like a more Witcher vibe in terms of like training up mages to support
to be like
various leaders.
The kind of like court wizardy type vibe, but not.
Because that's the thing, Skyrim has court wizards, even though the people are generally against magic.
Because even like wise kings and stuff, like you can't kind of shut off this whole like magical element. You want someone that has know-how on magical phenomena to be able to deal with things, and like to learn of things. Like,
all right, flesh golems, we see you guys. At first I thought it was just one person, and then I'm like, no, it's just everyone doing it.
But like regular, like, so the illusion could be dishonorable and so on, but we won't. But so we were thinking we would have this necromancers faction to satisfy that darker magic kind of feel as well, with really anti-Tuatha, which is basically RK. But then also there's this faction that called the Ashabar.
Like Ashabar or something, where they I don't know heaps about them, but as far as I'm concerned, they hate the undead, they hate necromancers, and they go hunt them down and kill them. But the Red Guard people kind of don't thank them for it because they're like, yuck, why do you even associate with that kind of stuff?
Because they are super into the dead, and like they have the most extensive burial rituals and stuff like that. They like, mummification and all that kind of stuff. But they really don't like tampering with the dead, even though that the Ashabar want to go in and
thank you, Jack,
basically just kill risen undead and stuff like that and suppress ancestor spirits that are causing trouble and so on. But that is even seen as sacrilege to the rest of the Red Guards. So the Ashabar don't have many friends, but they would work as a good antagonist faction to a necromancery sort of
for sure deal. For sure. You could even imagine that the mages in Ellen here wouldn't mind them, because you know how they would still be more open than your general Red Guard folk who are opposed to magic in general. Like they might kind of not mind the Ashabar.
The way too, we don't want just here's your good mages and bad mages and they're necessarily opposed. It might be possible to work both, but then some other things. So just as an example, we want to have the Yakutin Temple and the temples and stuff. We talked about that as factions. But for example, for the Assassins faction, because we weren't going to go with the Dark Brotherhood because of the time difference between that and Skyrim, it doesn't seem feasible that they're all of a sudden in Hammerfell.
We wanted to make this game set not long after Skyrim at all.
So we would do a new faction that basically is keeping in with the same kind of like chaotic like Sithist thing. Basically a cult that worships so what's his name? Sep, which is essentially the Yakutin equivalent of Lorcan, and basically it's the antithesis to all of the Yakutin temples and Imperial Cult's temples sort of worship. It's very anti, what's it called? Tolpapa, Ruptga, Akatosh. That
they have all these really strange names for
but basically gods. Thinking that their whole philosophy is they want to develop an easier way to get to the not just have this sort of dynamic where they have to use the walkabout. So they want a cheaper, easier way to get there, like sort of Sep did. We won't go into it too much here, but essentially the idea is it's the antithesis. You'd be hunting lots of and assassinating lots of religious figures and stuff like that. So if you join this guild, and to a certain point, it will close you out of like the Yakutin temple or something, and kind of vice versa, because
it's especially easy with religious ones, because it's kind of like in Oblivion where the gods are watching you. So if you are the leader of an assassins guild and you try and join a religious order, you can't get the blessings from the shrines anyway in our ideal game. And maybe the leader of this faction even knows. They just I spoke with the gods and they told me who you are.
We would, so just to throw out there, I guess I mentioned too about factions in general, we'd want to bring back ranks and a section that denotes all of your own ranks and guilds and alliances and stuff. But there's not going to be any sort of reputation meter like there would be in Fallout or Outer Worlds and so on, because we don't want it to feel like you're limited from too much. But there'll be it's just going to be specific instance. So like that, if you join that Assassin's Guild killing off religious heads, you've dedicated yourself to Sep, and then it's closing off to the temple in that regard. But that's not always going to be the case. It's just going to be the ones that really make sense, that specifically give you an opportunity cost.
It's kind of like if you go to I'll just address this really quickly. Weird fact, for the last year I've fallen asleep listening to your videos every night. It's a combination of the Elder Scrolls music and is that dulcet tones? I always see that word and I'm like, I don't want to say that wrong.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we appreciate
really
that.
Appreciate it.
Really helps, especially at the start of the year. YouTube is never good at the start of the year. As I was saying, you could have it in the Mages Guild. Towards the end, you would be closed out of joining the Necromancers, because maybe there's some interplay and you wipe them out or something like that. But the problem, like you were kind of saying with reputation, all right, picture this. Imagine you're in Skyrim and you go to Windhelm and you do a bunch of the quests there and you're helping Stormcloak supporters, right? It would be silly. Not silly, but it would just not fit an Elder Scrolls game if you then tried to go to Solitude and they started attacking you on sight because they're Imperial aligned and they hate you for helping the Stormcloaks. It would shut you out of doing so many different things, whether or not it's realistic.
And I just think it's also I also doubt Bethesda would ever do it, because it's part of Elder Scrolls. This is part of the movement from actually Oblivion to Skyrim was individualizing the bounty system, so that if you get a bounty in Whiterun, you're not necessarily got a bounty magically. They don't have like all telekinesis and they know everything about you. Like you don't have a bounty in this area. A similar thing would happen in this. There would be all of the different Hammerfell kingdoms, but they all have their own individual bounties, and sort of in that sort of way, like people would argue against reputation systems in some way. It's like everyone doesn't have this universal like social media checklist. It's not like the Dragonborn in his bio was putting like, you know, oh, I'm a proud Stormcloak supporter, and then
just helped this Stormcloak in the middle of nowhere to get out of a cave. Yeah,
so they don't have the that you know, telepathic element. So
like some of the guards seem to have in Oblivion.
Yeah.
Like you just touch some cheese and like a guard from 2 districts over knows you did it and he will come for you.
Yeah.
Daggerfall had regional crime, Morrowind and Oblivion had universal crime, and Skyrim went back to regional crime.
So it's good. Like I think a regional crime is definitely a good thing too, because if you want to role play a person that is playing, say, the Imperials only, and you just want to cause crime in the Stormcloak areas and only there, like it would feel silly if you go and commit a crime in you know, Windhelm, and then that's reflected and you get arrested in Solitude.
Yeah, for sure.
So similar sort of deal. But yeah, there's other cool things to throw in. Maybe we'll talk about the vampires.
All right, so around the Hammerfell High Rock area, basically from the Daggerfall game, there are a ton of vampire bloodlines, right? Yeah. Now, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it is something like 10. Like there's heaps, right? We don't want to do that many in our ideal game because we would rather pick a few and do them really well. So 2 of the main ones we thought were the coolest, and they were more dominant in Hammerfell, were the Kalari and I believe the Selenu.
Yeah. And the Kalari, so like what we decided really is what they sounded the coolest. So, because we can also rationalize in the time between Daggerfall and Skyrim that certain ones became dominant over others and so on. Sort of like how the Volkihar became dominant in Skyrim. But the Kalari, I know where their abilities and stuff are related to paralysis and so on. So you can imagine these cool like sort of sand desert vampires in the night, and it's all like all of a sudden you're walking around in the deserts in Hammerfell, and it's getting colder because it's dark and it's a dry desert. But at night, deserts often can get quite cold. And then all of a sudden, like this vampire, like jumping out of the sand and like shooting paralysis or something, sort of like kind of feels like a desert spider coming out and paralyzing the person and like slowly
it's
like
got some Scorponok
dragging
vibes.
them back to their tomb and stuff. Yeah. Whereas I forgot the Selenu one.
So the Selenu, they are resistant to elemental attacks.
But the reason we did that too was the
So the bloodline is named after Selenu, a Nedic tribal elder from ancient Skyrim who ordered the attempted cremation of LeMay Bao, the first vampire. After awakening on the pyre, LeMay brutally attacked the tribe, seemingly passing on the gift of vampirism in the process. So that had more lore. Basically, we found 3 that were like Hammerfell dominant mostly, and we just got rid of the other one because it was kind of boring.
One thing I will throw out there, someone just said this is kind of gameplay related, but also factors into a bunch of other things, is spell making. I'm pretty sure I definitely want that back.
Yeah, we do.
Degree. Like
you need to balance it and fix it up a little bit, but yeah.
But it just adds so much more variety and role playing as well. If you want to be a certain mage that uses these certain spells or combinations of them and stuff like that.
Zarek wanted to know: do we get a courtroom and the ability to argue your case like in Daggerfall?
Perhaps.
We haven't thought about it. It would fit Hierarch a lot more.
It would make it more interesting than the go to jail, resist arrest, or pay a fine.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to like maybe it's a way of getting around pay the fine, but like it's kind of basically like, you know, opportunity cost, I guess, depends. But you could like
it's one of those things, at least to me, where there's no reason why you can't, and it would be cool. It's just, I mean, if it's our ideal game, sure.
Yeah,
but it'd be in a realistic world, I'd rather the attention go somewhere else. But it's
maybe
still
put
cool.
towards the because you could do a thing where they just bring you before the king or whatnot, or some kind of
that's
like
true.
magistrate or something.
That's true.
Do you think there should be a religion system, like the mod that grants boons and items based off religious favor? Oh, like the Winter Sun mod.
And yes,
I would love that. I would think that adds such a fantastic layer to the role playing, is to actually have abilities and stuff that come with worshipping your god.
Yeah.
Specifically, because then you don't even have to, like, you can play Skyrim with that mod and you can just have Hunding or Magnus or something, and you can sort of, for you, the experience, it's such a little thing. It just gives you some cool extra abilities or so on, but it makes you feel way more like connected in the world.
It helps the role playing a ton. Like, for those of you who don't know how that mod works or how a system like that works, basically you pick a god or deity to worship, and there's a bunch of tenets that you have to follow to increase your worship. If you do the wrong thing by the god that you're trying to get the favor of, you lose. Is it called favor? Yes. Yeah, but when you max your favor out, then you unlock like cool powers and stuff to use. So it's all a very cool system, and they like certain activities, like some like destruction magic particularly. Like, it can get pretty niche.
Yeah. So all that kind of labor, like, obviously we've sort of said before in gameplay, but we would like more. Even if they didn't go back to a class system, having something when it has like your races are more different, your religion adds another layer and so on. But then also like basically just thinking of like layers to the character creation, so it makes you individual. So if you're all playing an Argonian warrior, but then you change depending on what religion you sort of have or whatnot skill set.
It's just one of many things. To make a character more individual. Like, we were even tossing up the idea of having the trait system, like you see in Fallout New Vegas, appear in an Elder Scrolls game. You know, there's pros and cons to it. Like, it would be a lot better if they brought attributes back, because then there's more things traits could influence, like if you were to do traits. But they're just things, and if we put them in Elder Scrolls 6, we wouldn't have them be these like wacky, like no wild wasteland. Like, that's not the Elder Scrolls feel. But if they were serious, like, I don't know, you do more unarmed damage at the cost of less melee damage or things like that. Again, with attributes, it's way easier. But there are some cool traits you could do.
Yeah, there's lots of things, like, just to touch on gameplay stuff. Like, there's lots of little things that we would want to rebalance and do things. Like, for example, like, I'm not a biggest fan of the idea that you can enchant a sword that's just as great as a sword that is literally part of the soul of a Daedric prince. You know what I mean? Like a Daedric artifact. Like, Daedric artifacts didn't have enough oomph. Like, they didn't feel like the most powerful sacred weapons and stuff like that. And they don't have, you know, you can, but at least have them different or unique, that only they have these abilities.
Also, Austin Thompson, do you think the game will have all 3 Covenant provinces? Waiting 10 to 12 years for just Hammerfell or High Rock would kind of suck. I mean, I don't. All 3. Does that mean?
I think you're talking about Orsinium.
Yeah. Okay. So like, I can definitely see them having Orsinium and Hammerfell, or a bit of Hammerfell and a bit of High Rock.
I mean,
I would prefer, if it was done in the same detail as if they just did 1 province, to have 2. Like,
well,
there's no reason why not.
Conspiracy theory. It's just Daggerfall again, but without all the random generation.
Yeah,
I'm
not going to be surprised
because
if it's that map area.
That can also like just they could add in all their boat stuff and so on, but with like the Adamantine Tower. But then you also get exposure to the top of the Alakit Desert sort of area.
Absolutely, and you could even have a DLC to go to Orsinium and then fulfill the wish of 3.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure if they'll do that. I'm actually not going to be surprised if it is a dual province game though. 100%.
We've got a bit of banking on but we can see both sort of happening. But we've actually got a bit of banking on High Rock.
Yeah, we think High Rock makes a lot of sense. And if we're being realistic, there's a lot of theories based on the trailer, which you can argue all day. Basically, like, I've found convincing theories for stuff that we've never even talked about, and at the end of the day you just go, could be anywhere. But if you go back to basics and you're like, what does the trailer look like, what vibe does it give you?
Yeah,
at least for me and a lot of other people, it definitely gives High Rock vibes. The music, like the set, like the whole theme of it all. And if you think about like what's popular, like, okay, you're Bethesda, you want to make money. Game of Thrones, Witcher, like all these big cult things, and also having just done Skyrim and before that was Oblivion, both of which are more traditional fantasy settings, it's going to be not only more difficult, I would say, but also less recognizable compared to your 2 previous entries in the series to go and just jump straight into Hammerfell, and people are going to be less familiar with it who aren't Elder Scrolls fans compared to the more it looks like things they already know.
Yeah.
The more they're like, oh, that kind of looks like Game of Thrones. I like Game of Thrones.
And then in
What's
High
that?
Rock, it's so much easier to tie up the Thalmor kind of stuff.
Exactly.
It's an Empire-controlled thing, so you still got the familiar Empire. Thank you, Zarek.
See you, man. Thank you very much. But yeah, so...
But yeah, it's just... I have a feeling...
At first, I was reading it, and I'm like... Is that a quote that like some Daedra says when they come out of Oblivion? And now I'm just like, oh, it's Australia. It's.
What would be the biggest letdown for each of you?
Set protagonist.
Set.
Like you're a Nord and you have a voice actor.
I mean, yeah, that would be huge, but I feel like that's just not. They won't even like.
Yeah, that would be my biggest letdown.
It'd be absolute suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just. There's no one kind of thing. It's kind of just. Absolutely butcher the lore or anything unique about it, like just to really like I don't know, man. They get rid of skills, bro. Imagine that. It's just like
perks.
It's just combat, magic, or stealth. Like there's 3 like skills, and they all have perks which all relate to the hit skills or something.
No, thank you. Gosh. Online. That's another huge no.
Oh, massive.
Single player. Can someone clarify? And I guess it's not going to clarify because it's just the chat and whatever. But did Todd Howard say Elder Scrolls 6 is 100% single player only confirmed? Because I see people say that and I feel like he said that. But then every now and then I'm like, did I just create that memory in my head? Is it confirmed? Yeah, just come on, Lore Shelter. Just the chat. As in like, I can't take it as 100% confirmation if someone's like, yeah, he said that. No, he didn't. It should be. Anyway.
I don't know.
Mr. G, Skyrim had shouts. What do you think we'll get now? We were talking about this earlier. Perhaps it was before you jumped into the stream. We were talking about like if it's in Hammerfell, it would be sword singing power based on finding memory stones, and you're this innately... I don't know, you're an avatar of some Yakutan god and you have sword singing powers. That's what I think if they were to even do a like, oh, we need another Dragonborn kind of thing, they would go with that. But there are a lot of problems with that, basically, that we talked about for role-playing and with lore. And we would much prefer if they just did it like Oblivion, where you don't have a superpower necessarily.
Yeah. Because then it's fine. The fun is in you developing your superpowers. Like, you kind of earn them. Like you feel like you've leveled up when you're a more powerful mage or a more powerful warrior or
also shout out to 500 viewers. Thank you very much for coming along. That's the biggest viewership we've had so far streaming on YouTube. And someone was saying, when do you think Elder Scrolls 6 is actually going to come out? Look, I'm more... if you put all the math together and like all this like stuff together and all the info, it kind of looks like it's really far away, but there's something in me, call me an optimist, and I've always said this, where I just feel like it's going to be sooner than... Like, not like this year or next, but it could be 2022. You know what I mean?
2022 kind of sounds right.
See what I mean? It's based on nothing. Like, it's like, just sounds right, man. Like, just sounds right. Just by 2024 is like the realistic kind of thing I can agree with, but I'm just like, nah, man, it's too far away. Because I'm probably just being optimistic.
Bethesda Austin basically doing Fallout 76, which is almost like a separate studio. So in that meantime, since 2015, it's been 5 years. They've been working on Starfield, whatever that is, and then Elder Scrolls 6. So because they're always working on them simultaneously. Like they've said this before, but the ideas for Skyrim were going around since the end of Oblivion. They sort of start working in the back end, but obviously their focus was on Fallout 3. And then after Fallout 3, they've got this sort of Fallout 4 idea and stuff, and they're working on it with a small part. But then they've got a lot working on Fallout 4. Sorry, on Skyrim, and then so on. The cycle goes on. But
Yeah.
they've always got like a work going on, and I feel like they're just gonna whack it out soon. So
I was gonna say that's something I agree with in the chat there. Hopefully this year is Starfield, and then 2 years later, kind of the 2022 is Elder Scrolls 6. That's like, I mean, hopefully Elder Scrolls 6 is this year, but it won't be.
it's
So
not. It's
that's
not,
like my realistic hope.
It's
is
not
that-
going to be. I feel like I'd put a lot of money on it, but it's not going to be a 5 years from Starfield thing. It's going to be sooner.
I just feel like they can't afford to wait as long as people think, you know, like that they could wait. Like I feel like 2024 is insane to wait that long between titles. I'm not saying it's impossible. Like I just feel like Bethesda, and look, I think what they've been doing is pretty crazy anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just feel like it's such a long time. Mr. G again, thank you so much. I've wanted to do YouTube for many years. Y'all are some huge influencers. Do you have any advice for someone trying to start in 2020? You'll have to keep it family friendly from the base. I can say that at least on YouTube. But as I've always said, when someone asks for YouTube advice, you really need to find a niche and kind of make sure that you can keep making content on it for a long time and then just own it and stick to it. I feel like jumping around between too many different things doesn't work. Like there's a lot of channels, even big ones are now, like big Bethesda channels that just did the same thing for ages and no one cared. And then suddenly they just blew up.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like,
and make sure
I've
you
heard
like
people
it as
say
well.
Things, other people saying things, but like almost like 3 years is the sweet spot, or like 2 years. But like, I mean, even for us, right? We started in 2013, then there was 2014, and then it wasn't until end of 2015 that it was like, oh, here's a break. With Fallout 4, we sort of grew a lot. But then even then again, 2016 was a massive growth for us because Skyrim Special Edition came out.
That's the other thing. When whatever niche you're in, when it jumps out, when there's a new release or something, jump on it. Yeah. Like you got to be stuck on it like glue.
But it also depends what you do. Like, you've got to like it and so on. Like for builds, we started with builds way back, but I used to sit there and just they're just characters we played and so on that we like to make up and so on. So we thought they'd be cool and we'd share them and so on. And like, you also get better over time. Like we make builds now that are like half an hour long, just ridiculously in depth compared to like the 5-minute builds that we first did like in 2013.
And you'll have all the nostalgia goggles out there going like, oh, your old builds were better. And I go back and I watch it and I'm like, oh my gosh, the backstory was 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's just a concept.
So it's as long as we can, I mean, they were cool concepts still, don't get me wrong, but you got to improve your content.
It's definitely something you want. Like you got to just do it because you really like it, but don't like, I don't know. It's hard to give a very specific advice.
But anyway, so if we want to talk a little bit more about Hammerfell, did you want to kind of go over quickly kind of like the visuals of like this kind of stuff? Like, you know, sure. Like kind of what it looks like a bit more.
Well, so let's just talk about like, you know, the aesthetics and the feels of everything. So we talked about how Japan is actually a big like cultural background for Yakuza, like in terms of that. So that in turn would affect the Red Guards, but aesthetically, there's not a lot there that's, you know, Japanese. So in terms of the feel of looks, like you'd be, if you want to look these up as we're talking about them, but basically North Africa, so like Berber clans, you got like Morocco in general, like some of the Moroccan architecture and stuff, which to a degree extends to Muslim Spain. In like Libya, you have the Tuaregs, which are those guys that like have, they're desert nomads and stuff, and they have these like veils, like the males wear veils when they get older and stuff. But like Hammerfell's and the Red Guards have already got these kinds of influences. We'd just be doubling down and picking pieces from there. But there's also Egyptian parts in there as well, and the mummification, and you've seen some of the temples and that. It's really actually not as just, people just go Arab and they think it's Arabic, but it's far more North African than with some like Arabic-y bits and Middle East stuff. But honestly, there's not a lot of Middle East looking stuff in there. Honestly, like you know, if you think Middle East and you're thinking like there's parts of the architecture and stuff, but it's not like it doesn't really scream, you know, all the Persian or anything or any of the like, or Israel or like, you know, or Babylon. It doesn't sort of have that as much as I think it's a lot more North Africa. To us, but like anyway, and then but also Middle East to mix that in. So stuff like that, and then you know there'll be cool things and all the piercings and tattoos and make them sort of look that decorative style kind of thing. They're a very ornate society, like you see with their temples. They're all like the big, I don't know, what do you call them? You know, the big bell top of the towers. The typical Arabic tower. You watched Aladdin, you know, the
circular towers.
Yeah, but that kind of stuff. But even in Morocco and stuff, they have all of these like beautiful temples and stuff that with all of the, I can't really describe it in words, but you know what I mean? Like the walls and stuff and this beautiful architecture. But they're very symbolic and stuff. And we'd love to see that. Even mix in some African, some South. There was if you're unfamiliar with it, there was once a project to make Hammerfell in Morrowind, in the Morrowind engine and stuff. And they had some ideas and stuff with, which I don't 100% all down for, but they did have some use of like African masks and stuff like that, which I don't think we'd use to the same degree as they do, but like it's cool to put in there and to have a bit of it's also something that doesn't get into fantasy a lot, which is like more Central African sort of themes. And there's some just really cool architecture, like some of the stuff, you know, Black Panther, the movie, some of the kind of stuff in there could be incorporated, but you don't want it to overshadow anything, but just as specific guild stuff.
Sure. And Cole, thank you very much. You will be getting your dose of Witcher content very soon.
Yeah, probably tonight or tomorrow night.
Yeah,
probably tonight, I think.
I don't know what that means American time, but maybe tomorrow.
12 hours from now. Something like that.
Yeah. But that's our next video.
Yeah.
Is a Witcher video.
Yeah. Mali, the Mali Empire and stuff. Like there's some of that.
There's heaps of cool things to draw influence from, and a lot of cool creatures and stuff as well. Like, and again, I just feel like they'll do High Rockets easier, but in terms of Hammerfell, you're going to have way more alien creatures compared to Skyrim. I mean, every province has what you could call alien creatures, like frost trolls, as generic as they may seem now from, you know, hours and hours of playing Skyrim, are still pretty unique looking. Like they're these big, white, multi-eyed things. So in Hammerfell, you could definitely have like a lot more insects, I would say. Like assassin beetles, giant scorpions, giant wasps, harpies and jackals and stuff. What are Dune Rippers again? We've got that now.
I don't even remember. It's in here, so it's
but there's tons and tons. Will there be Bretons in Hammerfell? Yeah, man. There's gonna be every race will be there. But most people in an ideal Hammerfell game should be Red Guards. You know.
I don't know, Yoruba and Yakuta. Yeah, we can
could be.
Yeah, could put all these cool like little bits of African things, but there's lots to do. It's kind of hard to just talk about this off the cuff.
There won't be feral ghouls. No.
What other notes were there with the thing? We talked about that, like Persian rugs and stuff, all the intel details. You see bits of this in ESO, but mummification's also a big thing for the Red Guards, confirmed. So that can be in there. But I don't know, guys, if you have any sort of ideas of stuff you want in there.
Yeah, guys, if you got any questions, we'll probably wrap up the stream kind of soon. By the way, just real quick, I'll just grab that. Austin Thompson. Do you think Fallout 4's settlement building will be improved on in Starfield and then eventually city building in Elder Scrolls 6? I don't think so. I don't even know what Starfield is.
I don't know what Starfield will be, but I doubt city building in the Elder Scrolls 6.
Personally, I don't think so. But anyway, with companions, we want to do kind of like, you know how Fallout has way more detailed companions than Elder Scrolls tends to, right? Like in Elder Scrolls, they don't really have companions. I mean, they do in Skyrim, but before, like there are some, but like they're not strong. The follower system in Skyrim was cool, but most of the personalities were pretty paper thin outside of like, Serrano and I guess Cicero and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we were thinking, keep the follower mechanics in there. So you still want to be able to, if you're, say, the leader of the Assassin's Guild, have those, I guess, even though we said not Dark Brotherhood, but Dark Brotherhood underlings, like you can take with you and maybe a mercenary and things like this. But we would definitely like if they added in some like proper companions as well that are, completely optional. You don't have to use them, but companions that are, I don't know, say there's 8 of them. And they're like really well put together with like different ideologies and perspectives, and they make you question your decisions and things like that. Again, it's not as important to an Elder Scrolls game as to a Fallout game that's more integrated with like choices and factions in the world.
This is the thing.
It'd still be really cool.
Fallout's always had a bit more of a there's a bit more of a story sort of consequence-y. It feels a bit more personal. Like Elder Scrolls has always been a bit more of a be who you want in this fantasy world, but it's less like, I don't know, finessed is word. I know it sounds vague, but like there's less, in Fallout 1 and 2, there's a very specific story that sort of wraps up all the world building and faction choices together. Whereas in the Elder Scrolls games, most of the time, the main story kind of feels isolated from all the other stories you experience and quests and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I've genuinely watched every video you've made these last 3 years. Well, thank you very much. Like, that is a lot.
It's a lot.
That is a lot of videos, man. If I'm being honest, technically, I haven't even watched every video we've made in the last 3 years. Because if you make a video. Sorry, you write a video and voice a video, but someone else edits it, then like I don't feel the need to watch it. I know what I say. Yeah. I said it. Yeah. I know what I said. So that's a ton. But thank you for that. Thank you. What other questions do you guys have? What are the weapons? More Hammerfell weapons, more curved swords. You're gonna have your standard things. I don't want a game where everything's just like, now everything's a scimitar, Daedric scimitar, Orcish scimitar. Like, you can still have that, but they will still be your normal weapons. They
should like distinguish with swords. Like, so they'll have like, your typical sword, but then there is scimitar, which is a whole sort of category of swords, and there's Orcish, Daedric, so on. Different versions of that, because you have plenty of scimitars, but you don't want them all to just be, like that. Maybe even so, someone said Egyptian axe, and I'm not sure if you mean Egyptian sword, like the Khopesh.
What about rocket-propelled grenade launchers?
Yeah, bro. But the Khopesh crossbows should be back. Crossbows, bows, spears, but with different swords, like curved swords, Khopesh stuff. Could be some cool like ancient Yakutan sword stuff. A bunch of weapons. I feel like we don't need to go into the. There's a lot of like weapon categories that need to be satisfied before the gimmick ones that are like, my like ninja stars.
Like, yeah, for sure.
Like things like that.
That's the thing.
Like,
I
as
think
cool as they are, they're just.
It's a priority system. So if someone's like, do you want throwing stars? I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool, but it only makes sense to have it if they already address all these other more important additions first.
The same with the armor system, robes over armor, like Morrowind and stuff.
Yeah,
I think cool. That is actually almost. I think they really, really should do that Fallout 4 kind of system.
Just to answer the question, sorry, no Thorm in Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah,
as you were saying.
I was just saying in Fallout 4, like how you have that, like, or Morrowind, how you have that like layered system. I think just because of the nature of Hammerfell, and they have heaps of drapery and wraps and all that kind of stuff, should be able to get them on. Over things, but you got to work that out with enchanting. So last thing, can we get a Kratos build? And I'm sorry, I recommended the Dark Maneuvers mod that killed the Fenrir players. God, I can't even remember. Maybe it was that. I can't remember exactly, but I know the mods and stuff were changed, and it was just
our whole Let's Play just went
died. The story of Fenrir, that was good. Yeah, but
I don't know about the build. I feel like when we make builds, we really go for original concepts. Like, well, sometimes we base stuff off things, but generally speaking, we want to kind of, I don't know, go for like just fresh idea that it's not like...
Also,
for example, even things like when people really want a Viking build, if enough people want it and they really want it and we can make it work and it doesn't feel forced, we'll do it. But even those, I don't really feel like, oh, I really want to do a Viking build, because I want to do something that's Elder Scrolls inspired in Elder Scrolls.
Also, like the Viking build or so on is just going to be like a bunch of other Nord builds and stuff we've made and so on. Like the Kratos build, like you got to think about like what it actually involves in terms of like maybe like, you know, an enchanted frost axe.
Yeah.
And then he's just a warrior, and then or whatever he is, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're trying to do lore ones.
But yeah. And we could have better hand-to-hand combat options. But again, it was kind of like what Scott was saying about the ninja stars, is you don't really want to focus on something unless everything else has had just as much attention. For example, I wouldn't want to keep the combat exactly like Skyrim, and then suddenly you put like so many hours of work into making like a Mortal Kombat unarmed, like martial arts thing at the expense of not enhancing all of these other aspects. But if all the other things are enhanced, then sure, why not? As long as it makes sense. Martial arts is a tricky one, because like just punching steel plate armor can feel silly.
I can understand why in Skyrim they got rid of it. Don't know if it's the best decision and they like made it different, but yeah.
Yeah. For sure. What's this may be a really silly question. What are vanity slots again?
Just like, I'm assuming they just mean like putting on like belts or
cosmetic
like
piece slots,
and,
right? Like just for look. Yeah.
Because the only thing you got to factor in there is enchantment. But Morrowind had that thing where certain things were more powerful. Like certain items had more enchantability or not, or like different things. But because you don't want to just be able to like, oh, I can put on like, here's my earrings and here's my nose piercing and here's like, you know, my robe and my belt and stuff, and they're all enchanted. So you're enchanted to the max.
Yeah.
Like you.
Well, I mean, that's why it would have to be a vanity slot, because it's like this is just for the look.
Yeah. But it definitely makes sense, and also aesthetically will make a lot of different factions be able to have a bit of individuality by still using similar armor types and stuff, but with different like drapery and like different you know, robes and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Someone was also saying, I think the best bit of evidence was the behind the scenes development. Weren't they modeling desert style rocks?
Yeah, there was that one bit next to the granny's face.
The granny.
The Shirley.
Yeah. You know, she's I believe someone made her a Skyrim mod now as well. It's intense, man. Yeah. That's intense.
But yeah, and there'd be more orc content like that person mentioned. But I think we're out of. Yeah, we're out of
it's been a good brainstorm. We've got plenty of notes. We've got heaps of work to do before we can put this together. But
it'll be a while.
Be sure to stay tuned and follow us on Twitter as well if you want to know when we're doing more live streams. I don't know if we may even do another stream for our Ideal Hammerfell. Yeah, like to kind of like when we've got like our big 10,000 word document, we come back and just explain it all and run through it with you guys and see what you think. Thank you for all of the support and all of the love. I do see, like, if you're leaving comments, like, I love your stuff and so on. I see it. I just can't say it because I'm speaking or Scott's speaking, but I definitely see it. So thank you very much. We appreciate all of that love and support.
Get in those
flesh golems. That's it. Crawdad crew. See you later, guys.
All right.
It's been a good one.
Bye-bye.